I was 24 when my appendix burst on a cold November night. My parents, seizing the moment while I was hospitalized, sold everything I owned, told everyone I'd died from an overdose, and cut me off completely. 3 years later, my brother called me in tears, overwhelmed because the consequences of their actions had finally caught up with them. It started around 2 a.m. when I woke up thinking I'd eaten something bad. By 4 a.m., when my roommate Caleb got home from his night shift, I was curled up on the bathroom floor, immobilized by pain. He rushed me to the ER, and within 40 minutes, I was in surgery for a ruptured appendix that had triggered peritonitis. I spent 11 days in the hospital, hooked to IV antibiotics, drifting in and out of consciousness from the infection and painkillers. My parents, Mark and Diane, had a key to my apartment from when I'd moved in 2 years prior. We'd grown distant since I'd graduated college and refused to follow their rigid expectations. They wanted me working for their church, living in their tightly knit religious circle, essentially molding myself into their vision of a perfect son. I wanted a career in tech and my own independence. They didn't take it well. When Caleb drove me home from the hospital that Friday afternoon, I found my apartment door ajar. I stepped inside and froze. Everything was gone. My sofa, my bed, my custom-built gaming PC I'd spent years saving for, my television, my laptop with all my work files and personal records, my kitchen furniture, everything. My bedroom was bare except for the curtains. My closet was empty, not a single piece of clothing left except what I'd worn to the hospital. The worst blow was my grandmother's keepsake box. My mom's mother, who passed when I was 19, had left me her engagement ring, antique bracelets, and a collection of family photos from the 1940s. That box, which had sat on my dresser, was gone. I called my dad. He picked up on the second ring. When I asked what happened to my apartment, he chuckled, not nervously, but as if it was genuinely funny, and said they needed money fast and assumed I didn't need the stuff anyway. I asked about my grandmother's box, the photos, and he casually said they'd sold it all in a bundle to an estate dealer. My mom took the phone and asked what I was doing with all that junk, pretending I had a real life. She said they'd done me a favor by clearing out my pathetic existence. I asked about my lease, and my dad admitted they'd told my landlord I'd died, showing him my hospital admission papers as proof of complications. The landlord bought it, and they'd already terminated my lease. My mom said this was simpler, cleaner, and I should just come back home where I belonged. I demanded they return my things. My dad said the money was gone and hung up. I called back 17 times in the next hour. They blocked my number. Texting didn't work, blocked. Facebook messages, blocked. The next day, I drove to their house with Caleb. They refused to open the door. I saw my dad peering from an upstairs window. Over the next week, I learned they'd told our entire extended family I'd overdosed on drugs and died in the hospital. My Aunt Laura called me, sobbing, confused why I was texting her when I was supposed to be dead. That's how I found out the extent of their lie. They'd spun a story that I was a secret addict who'd hidden my struggles and finally succumbed. They'd soaked up sympathy from their church community. People brought them meals, and someone even started a fundraiser for my supposed funeral costs. My Uncle Nathan told me they'd changed their phone numbers and warned everyone I was alive but dangerously unhinged, instructing family to call the police if I reached out. They turned my entire extended family against me. Half thought I was dead, the other half thought I was a deranged addict harassing my grieving parents. I stayed with Caleb for 3 months, rebuilding from nothing. I had only the clothes from the hospital, my phone, and my wallet. My job was gone because my laptop with all my work was stolen. No documents, no childhood photos, no connection to my grandmother's legacy, nothing. My landlord kept my security deposit, believing I'd died and my parents were my heirs. Here's what people need to know about Mark and Diane. They weren't just cruel, they were deliberate. They lived in a lavish house in an exclusive religious enclave, obsessed with appearances, always competing to seem more prosperous, more devout, more blessed. They drove cars they couldn't afford, posted glamorous vacation photos online, and built their lives around looking perfect. But they were broke. I later learned they were 3 months behind on their mortgage when they emptied my apartment. Credit cards maxed out, loans from church members unpaid. They were facing foreclosure and social ruin in the community that defined them. My hospitalization was their opportunity. My gaming PC alone was worth $4,000. My furniture, electronics, and grandmother's keepsakes likely brought them $12,000, $15,000 in quick cash. enough to delay their financial collapse and preserve their facade. Declaring me dead served two purposes. It explained my absence so I couldn't challenge their story, and it earned them pity, meals, prayers, and donations from their church. For 6 months, I focused on survival, finding a new job, saving money, replacing essentials. But my anger didn't fade, it hardened into resolve. I wasn't after forgiveness. I wanted accountability. I filed a police report for theft, but the cops called it a civil issue since my parents had a key and access. I explained they'd stolen everything while I was unconscious and lied about my death, but the detective dismissed it. With money borrowed from Caleb, I hired a lawyer and sued them for theft, fraud, emotional harm, and more. The lawsuit took 2 years. My parents stalled at every turn, claiming I'd given permission, that the items were gifts, or that I'd abandoned them. Their church friend lawyer was outmatched. My lawyer had proof of my purchases, Caleb's testimony about my apartment's contents, and records of the fake death notice to my landlord. I won a $38,000 judgment for my stolen property, emotional damages, and legal fees. They appealed and lost. The judgment became final 8 months ago, but I did more than sue. I documented everything. Their lies, the people they told I was dead or an addict, the church members they scammed with the funeral fund. I saved their social media posts mourning their lost son, every hateful voicemail from relatives who believed I was harassing them. Then I started contacting family, methodically sharing evidence. Hospital records to Laura proving I was alive, the police report to Nathan, court documents to my cousins. Slowly, their lies unraveled. Family members who thought I was dead realized they'd been deceived. Those who thought I was unstable saw my parents' manipulation. Their perfect image began to fracture. 3 months ago, the pressure intensified. They hadn't paid the judgment, hoping I'd give up. My lawyer filed for a writ of execution, allowing asset seizure. We placed liens on their house, garnished my dad's church wages, and froze their bank accounts. Their financial facade collapsed. The church learned of the garnishment, the mortgage company saw the lien, and their community began questioning them. Why rob your son? Why lie about his death? Why scam us? This morning at 5 a.m., my brother Ethan called, sobbing. I hadn't spoken to him in 3 years. He'd been 22 when this started, living with my parents, silent, complicit in their story. He begged me to stop, saying Mom was hospitalized from a breakdown, Dad was unraveling, lawyers were relentless, and church members were demanding answers. Their world was imploding, and he blamed me. I asked which hospital Mom was in. He said she'd had a panic attack and Dad called an ambulance. I asked about the lawyers. He said they were facing house liens, wage garnishment, and frozen accounts. Church members wanted their funeral donations back. Their reputation was shattered. I told Ethan I'd call back and hung up. Sitting in my rebuilt apartment, I realized this was the moment I'd waited for, their consequences, undeniable and inescapable. Ethan called 6 more times. I didn't answer. I wanted them to feel the weight of their actions, just as I'd felt the weight of losing everything while recovering in a hospital bed. I'm torn between confronting them, letting the legal system crush them, or explaining to Ethan exactly why they deserve this. But mostly I'm thinking about my grandmother's keepsake box, my childhood photos, sold for their quick cash, and how they laughed when I begged for answers. They tried to erase me. I erased their perfect life instead. Update 1, I went to their house, and things spiraled in ways I didn't anticipate. Ethan won't stop calling, and now half my family is entangled, picking sides in a growing feud. I ignored Ethan's calls for 3 days before answering. He was still crying, pleading for me to fix things. I said I'd come to their house Saturday afternoon, letting them stew in their consequences first. When I arrived, 2 unfamiliar cars were in the driveway. Ethan opened the door, looking exhausted, eyes red from crying. He rambled about Mom's hospital stay, her new medication, Dad's skipping work, and their crumbling lives. I walked into the living room where my parents sat with 2 strangers, church elders, there to mediate. My dad stood, suggesting a family meeting with spiritual guidance. I refused, telling the elders to leave. This wasn't a church matter. One elder, an older man, insisted the church had a stake in resolving this. I said they could stay and hear what my parents did 3 years ago. My dad claimed I was too emotional, suggesting we reschedule. The elders left after I refused to budge. Alone with my parents and Ethan, my dad tried controlling the conversation, admitting mistakes under financial stress. I asked if he was apologizing. He said he was explaining their mindset. I clarified. They saw me unconscious in a hospital and stole everything to solve their money problems. My mom claimed they'd tried to help me before, worried about my dangerous lifestyle, living alone, working secular jobs, rejecting their church. She said my hospitalization confirmed their fears, and clearing my apartment aligned with their financial desperation. Here's the core of Mark and Diane. They genuinely see themselves as victims. They believe stealing my belongings was a misguided act of love. I asked Mom how selling her mother's ring and photos helped me. She said they were just objects, and her mother would have prioritized her survival. My dad offered to replace items once the legal mess settled if I dropped the judgment. I laughed, asking why I'd abandon a 3-year fight because they asked nicely. He preached family forgiveness. Ethan, silent until now, admitted he didn't help steal but was there when they unloaded my things into their garage. He saw my grandmother's box, asked if they'd keep it, and Mom said no. Everything was for sale. He felt sick but went along, believing it was an intervention. I told him he'd had 3 years to apologize but stayed silent until their consequences hit him. My dad redirected, saying their church was questioning them, demanding answers about the funeral scam. Their wages were garnished, their house liened, their reputation ruined. My mom yelled that I was vindictive, not seeking justice, and a good son would forgive. I said they chose money over me, erasing me to save their image. My dad tried claiming they were elderly and struggling, but at 54 and 56, they were just facing accountability for the first time. After 2 hours of circular arguments, defending their actions, minimizing, begging for mercy, I left. Ethan followed, saying they'd changed, that the church was abandoning them, that Mom's health was failing. He begged for a payment plan. I asked where their loyalty was when they robbed me and laughed. He had no answer, crying as I drove away. Now my extended family is involved. Laura called, saying I was too harsh. Nathan urged a family solution without courts. My cousin Emily texted, asking if I needed the money or just wanted punishment. My parents are spinning a narrative of repentant parents persecuted by their unforgiving son, splitting the family. I didn't build this case to compromise. I built it to dismantle their facade, and it's working. Their church, their house, their relationships are collapsing. Ethan called again, saying Dad lost his church job, Mom's friends shunned her, and they're isolated. He begged for mercy. I said I'd think about it, but I won't. They'll hope just as I hoped they'd return my grandmother's box. They taught me hope without action is just prolonged pain. I'll let them feel it a little longer. Update 2, the situation has exploded, dragging in my entire extended family and fracturing relationships beyond repair. 3 weeks ago, Laura, Nathan, and Emily showed up at my apartment, unannounced, to talk about the family crisis. Laura said she loved me, but the conflict was destroying everyone. My grandparents were stressed, family gatherings impossible. Nathan said my parents admitted their wrongs and were remorseful, but the judgment would bankrupt them, possibly leaving them homeless. Emily argued families resolve things privately, not through public legal battles. I recounted everything. The hospital, the empty apartment, my grandmother's stolen keepsakes, the overdose lies, the fake funeral scam. I showed them hospital records, the police report, the court judgment. Laura acknowledged the horror but asked my endgame. Did I want them homeless to prove a point? I said they erased me first. My goal was consequences, not revenge. Nathan called it vindictive, saying I'd proven my point and should show mercy. Emily said Ethan was suffering, jobless, dumped, living with our parents in a house facing foreclosure. I asked why Ethan's choices were my burden. They suggested payment plans or pausing the lawsuit. I said I'd think about it, knowing they were my parents' proxies. A week later, my dad's mother, Grandma Ruth, called. She said Mark had always chased status, ignoring her warnings about living beyond his means. She called their actions unforgivable, offering support if I needed it. Her validation meant everything. 2 weeks ago, the church drama escalated. Ethan said members who donated to the funeral fund demanded refunds, threatening lawsuits. My parents claimed the money went to grief counseling, but no one believed them. The church fired Dad, citing the scandal. Ethan begged me to reduce the judgment, saying Mom's panic attacks and Dad's depression were tearing them apart. I asked why he never demanded they pay me. He said they couldn't, called me cruel, and hung up. Thanksgiving was a disaster. Laura hosted, inviting everyone, including my parents, without telling me. They sat in her living room, looking worn. Ethan was panicked. Family members pushed for reconciliation. My dad apologized publicly, admitting mistakes under financial stress. I pressed him, What was he sorry for? He vaguely regretted taking my things and lying about my death. My mom, crying, asked what more I wanted. I said $38,000. They said they didn't have it. Laura suggested a $50 a month plan. I asked her to calculate how long that'd take. Silence. Ethan exploded, calling me stubborn and vindictive. I reminded him of his silence while they sold my things. He called me selfish. The room split, some silent, others suggesting compromises. I left. My lawyer called last week. The bank started foreclosure. My parents missed 3 mortgage payments. She suggested settling for less since they couldn't pay. I told her to pursue the full judgment. Ethan called, saying they'd lose the house, blaming me. I said they earned it by stealing from me first. I know this sounds harsh. People might think I should compromise, but I spent 3 years rebuilding while fighting for justice. I'm done compromising. They cared about their house, their status, their church. I'm taking it all, just as they tried to take everything from me. Final update: the house is gone. My parents lost everything, and I watched without regret. The foreclosure finalized 2 weeks ago. They had 30 days to leave. Ethan texted, begging me to intervene before they ended up homeless. I didn't reply. Last Saturday, I drove to their house to see it. I parked across the street watching for 20 minutes. A rented moving truck sat in the driveway. Ethan and Dad carried boxes. Mom sat on the steps, crying. Neighbors stared. After 3 years, seeing it felt unreal. I walked up. Ethan dropped a box, glaring. Dad looked defeated, asking if I was satisfied. I said I'd be satisfied when they paid the $38,000. He said they'd lost everything. There was nothing left. I reminded him they'd taken everything from me and laughed. Mom said I'd become unrecognizable, cruel, that revenge would poison me. I said I was vindicated, not poisoned, and everyone knew their lies now. Ethan called me out for gloating. I said I'd earned the right to see their consequences. Dad admitted their wrongs, but claimed desperation drove them, not evil. I called it sociopathic. Robbing me and lying about my death was calculated. Ethan told me to leave, saying I'd destroyed their lives and the family. I asked where he'd live. He said with a friend, cramped and miserable, and I'd never see him again. I said he'd had 3 years to apologize, but chose silence. Mom blamed me for breaking Ethan, saying I'd punished his loyalty. I said he chose to help them steal and stay silent. Dad asked what would stop me. I said $38,000. He said bankruptcy would erase the debt. I said their moral debt and ruined reputation would follow them forever. Laura arrived, calling my presence cruel. I said their choices caused this, not me. She said the family was broken, holidays ruined, my grandparents heartbroken. I said I was satisfied. Dad asked me to leave. I said I'd leave when ready, reminding them they judged me when I had nothing. Mom mourned our lost family. I said she'd used me as a prop for their image, discarding me when I didn't comply. I left as they packed. They're now in a small apartment, working low-wage jobs. Their church shunned them. Funeral fund donors want refunds. The family is fractured. Laura and Nathan think I'm cruel. Cousins are split. Gatherings are over. Grandma Ruth calls, proud I stood up to them, ashamed of her son. Her support means everything. I'm 27, living in an apartment I built with my own money, surrounded by friends and a job I love. I spent 3 years rebuilding while dismantling their facade. They cared about their house, status, and church. I took it all legally and methodically. They laughed when I begged for my belongings. Now they're the ones begging. They tried to erase me. I erased their perfect life. That's not revenge, it's justice, and I'll never apologize for it.